What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another story from the depths of Reddit. Today, we're diving into a story that's going to make your blood boil, then maybe break your heart a little, and definitely leave you questioning what you would do in this situation. This comes from a 28-year-old guy who thought he had his whole life figured out, until everything came crashing down in the most brutal way possible. Our story begins with what seemed like a perfect relationship. Sarah and our narrator had been together for 3 years. They moved in together, they were talking about marriage and kids, planning their whole future together. He described Sarah as friendly and outgoing, which he absolutely loved about her. But sometimes, the things we love most about someone can end up being the very things that destroy us. 6 months ago, Sarah started a new job at a marketing firm. She was excited. He was happy for her. Everything seemed normal. But then she started mentioning this guy, Jake. A lot. How funny he was, how he helped her with projects at work. Typical work friend stuff. At least, that's what our narrator thought. Now here's where this story gets frustrating, because looking back, this guy realizes all the red flags were right there in front of him. Sarah started working late more and more often. She was constantly on her phone, but would hide the screen whenever he walked by. Their intimate life started suffering because she was always tired or stressed. She began dressing up more for work than she ever had before. When he'd ask about her day, she'd get defensive. And perhaps most telling of all, she stopped making weekend plans with him. He brought up his concerns multiple times, but Sarah had an explanation for everything. Jake was just a friend. Work was really busy right now. She was just tired. And because he loved her and wanted to trust her, he chose to believe these explanations. He chose to ignore what his gut was telling him. This went on for months. Months of him feeling like something was wrong, but pushing those feelings down because he didn't want to be the paranoid, controlling boyfriend. Months of Sarah living this double life, coming home to him every night after spending her days with another man. Then 3 weeks ago, everything came crashing down in the most devastating way possible. His phone had died, so he borrowed Sarah's laptop to check his email. A simple, innocent moment that would change everything. A text notification popped up on the screen from Jake, and what it said was like a punch to the gut. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby," followed by a heart emoji and some messages so explicit that our narrator couldn't even repeat them in his post. Imagine that moment. Your hands shaking, your heart pounding, your whole world tilting on its axis. He knew he shouldn't have looked further, but how could he not? What he found was worse than his worst nightmare. They'd been seeing each other for 4 months. 4 entire months of lies, deception, and betrayal. But it gets worse. The messages between Sarah and Jake weren't just about their affair. They were talking about him, about their relationship. Sarah called him boring and safe. She said she was just going through the motions with him. The woman he was planning to marry, the woman he thought was his soulmate, was describing their relationship like it was a chore she had to endure. And here's the part that would absolutely destroy me if I were in his shoes. They weren't just meeting up at hotels, or in cars, or at Jake's place. They were using his apartment, his bed, the home he shared with Sarah, the bed where they slept together every night. That's where she was bringing this other man while he was at work, trusting her completely. When Sarah came home that night, he confronted her with everything. And her reaction? It was textbook cheater behavior. First, she tried to deny it completely. Then she tried to minimize it, saying it didn't mean anything. Then, and this is the part that always gets me, she got angry at him for snooping. She tried to turn herself into the victim because he had violated her privacy by discovering her affair. Finally, when all her defenses crumbled, she broke down and admitted everything. But even her confession was devastating. She said she was confused and didn't know how it happened. She claimed she loved him but wasn't in love with him anymore. Jake made her feel alive again. After 3 years together, after all their plans and dreams and shared experiences, she felt more alive with a man she'd known for 4 months than with him. He told her to pack her things and get out. She wanted to stay with her sister. And that should have been the end of the story. A clean break from a woman who had betrayed him in the worst possible way. But life rarely gives us clean endings, does it? Here's where this story takes a turn that's almost too perfect to be real, but sometimes reality really is stranger than fiction. Last week, Sarah showed up at his door, and she was crying hysterically. What had happened? Jake had been telling her throughout their entire affair that he was going to leave his wife for her. Yes, you heard that right. Jake was married. Sarah knew he was married, and she was still having an affair with him, believing that he would leave his family to be with her. But Jake got cold feet. He ended things completely. Told Sarah that it was just physical for him and that he never intended to leave his wife and kids. Sarah, who had thrown away a 3-year relationship for this man, who had called her boyfriend boring and safe, who had betrayed someone who truly loved her, suddenly found herself completely alone. Since then, she's been texting and calling nonstop. The messages started out apologetic, but have gotten increasingly desperate. She's saying she made the biggest mistake of her life, that he's the only man who ever truly loved her, that she was just scared of commitment, but he's her soulmate. She'll do anything to make it right. Jake meant nothing. He's her future. She even showed up at his workplace and caused a scene. Picture this. You're at work, trying to move on with your life, and your ex-girlfriend who cheated on you shows up sobbing in front of all your coworkers, begging for another chance. The embarrassment, the humiliation, the way that would make you feel. And here's where this story gets really complicated, because our narrator admits something that a lot of people in a situation would never admit. He still loves her. Or at least, he loves who he thought she was. Part of him wants to believe that people can change, that her remorse is genuine. She's saying all the right words about couples counseling and complete transparency. But he also knows, deep down, that she's only back because her plan A didn't work out. She had 4 months to realize she was making a mistake. 4 months where she could have ended the affair and chosen him. Instead, she chose Jake every single day for 4 months. She only came back when Jake rejected her. 2 days later, he posted an update. Sarah came by again, this time with a 6-page letter detailing every lie, every meetup, every moment she chose Jake over him. She said she wanted complete honesty, even if it hurt. She started individual therapy and claims she realizes she has intimacy issues from her parents' divorce. She brought back the promise ring he'd given her for their 2-year anniversary, saying she doesn't deserve to wear it unless he chooses to put it back on her finger someday. So here's the question that's tearing this guy apart. And it's the same question I want you to think about as you listen to this. Is Sarah genuinely remorseful, or is she just desperate because she got dumped? Can someone who betrayed you so completely, who spoke about you with such contempt, who chose someone else over you every day for months, really change? And even if they can change, do they deserve the chance to do it with you? Or should that growth happen with someone new? The comments on this post were exactly what you'd expect. Some people saying once a cheater, always a cheater. Others arguing that if she's genuinely remorseful and willing to work on things, people deserve second chances. But here's what I keep coming back to. She didn't just cheat. She emotionally checked out of their relationship months before the physical affair even started. She called him boring. She said she was going through the motions. That's not just a mistake or a moment of weakness. That's a fundamental lack of respect and love. What would you do in this situation? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because we've got more relationship drama coming your way every single week.